What do you want to hear from Jensen today that will convince you, that will convince other investors that earnings growth and indeed growth of the company has not peaked?
Good morning. Yes. So I think, first of all, I agree with the reasoning thought process and the inference, right? So inference is becoming much more compute intensive. It can be up to 100 to 1,000 times more compute intensive. Nvidia is the biggest player in that by far. And, the hope would be that Jensen will share some of his long-term strategy on sort of how does he capture and continue to gain market share with an inference. Now, the second thing, though, I would say is I actually think that the scaling laws within training are not entirely dead yet either, both in pre-training and post-training. And my guess would be that the company, Nvidia, will confirm that as well. Now, this year, we're going to see the big Blackwell cluster scaling. That's going to be a 10x improvement versus last year, for sure. And then secondly, also, we have this reinforcement learning without humans in the loop that DeepSeek has shown that seems to describe another scaling law in post-training. And as far as we can see, that has driven a ton of training demand, and which you can see actually, frankly, on GitHub and Hugging Face in terms of the number of DeepSeek models. Right. And then the third thing, if I may say, there's going to be a lot of talk about physical AI that's going through its S-curve as we speak. You can see that in Waymo, right, in San Francisco, they have 20% market share. And I think there's going to be a lot of talk about agents, but frankly, that's a little bit further out. So it's nice if they talk about that, but I think it's more important to talk about inference scaling and training scaling.
Really interesting points. He's often paid lip service to Elon Musk and Tesla, for example, maybe a bit with Waymo, maybe the future of robotics as well, Daniel. I'm interested in the rampant pace at which now we see Jensen put out new products. We're going to hear a lot about Blackwell Ultra, the next iteration. We're also going to hear about Rubin, I'm sure, which is the next AI breakthrough. Can they really develop at this pace? Because we saw the sort of supply chain hiccups with Blackwell as it rolled out.
Yes. So I think the answer is yes, and I'll tell you why. They have the best people, they have the most people focusing on this product, and they have the biggest R&D pools, and they have the most capacity at Taiwan Semi. I think the interesting counter question to this, though, is to say, can the others even follow, right? So, for example, the big hyperscalers, they all try to develop their own chips. They're trying to do this with a partner. They're not doing it all alone, which means that they're trying to optimize the system by themselves. Nvidia is optimizing the systems by themselves, whereas the others are doing it with partners, which is going to make it much, much, much more difficult to compete with Nvidia. So I think the answer is yes, and I think that creates a lot of competitive differentiation versus anybody else.
Daniel, you mentioned physical AI, and I'm curious what you think is the realistic form factor when it comes to physical AI, and just how far out we are from that.
Yeah, so we thought about this a lot as well. So it's clear that the big physical AI revenue growth driver in the next 1 to 2 years is going to be self-driving, so at least in our opinion. Why? Because you can see it in San Francisco already. The experience is amazing when you drive with Waymo people. They have 20% market share. They're moving to many other cities. And this is just the beginning, right? They have a tiny, tiny market share in terms of total mileage. Now, the humanoids, they're pretty interesting as well, but arguably they're a little bit further away. So in our opinion, it's going to be self-driving vehicles within big cities in the next 1 to 2 years that should drive a massive explosion in terms of inference demand, which benefits the likes of Nvidia, but many, many other players on the supply chain as well.
Daniel, how far away is quantum? Because we actually heard a sort of a long time range, maybe up to 2 decades coming from Jensen, but now he's actually sitting on a panel around quantum and trying to make it a quantum day.
Yes, so we think quantum computing is sort of maybe in the 80s in terms of where semiconductors were, like at that time period, right? So it's a long time out. The reasoning for that is, first of all, there's no CUDA equivalent as of today, at least yet, for quantum computing, so you can't actually really use it easily. And secondly, the scaling of the qubits has proven to be quite difficult. Yeah? So it's at least 10, 15, 20 years out in terms of a use case potentially. And I would actually argue if NVIDIA plays their cards well, then quantum computing could be one of the parts of computation they offer in the very, very long term, alongside the GPUs, CPUs, and whatever else PU you might have